Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you for another 2 hours. Sidelines on this Thursday, week 4 of college football about to get started. Got a great show lined up today. Dudley Dawson is out today. In his replacement today will be Otis Kirk. Otis, longtime veteran sports writer in Arkansas. Dudley said, hey, give him a call and get him on your show. And I got to talking to him yesterday. I was like, wow, what great people in Arkansas. You talk about a team. You cross that bridge, one team in one state, one team. It is incredible. Looking forward to having Otis on the show with us today. Second segment, head down to Tuscaloosa, talk to Gary Harris, Tide 100.9. Always love hearing what he's got to say. WVUA TV channel 23, top of the second hour. Head out to Arlington, Dallas, Fort Worth, the Metroplex. I hate that term, but I got to say it. Bo Carter, formerly of the Big 12 office, now the Football Foundation, Baseball Writers of America, former SID at Mississippi State back in the days, as Buddy Martin talks, when they would pick you up at the airport in Jackson or the Golden Triangle Airport and drive you on over to Starkville. We need those days again. I'm telling you what, the great sports writers are like great artists, and we love them. And in the fourth segment, Ken Capps, Football Writers Association of America from Dallas, will join us as well, talking about the big picture of the college football landscape. Hey, do us a favor. Give us a follow on Twitter at @sidelines_live. I am starting to really get after this Twitter. Really didn't. I'll tell you one thing. If you don't understand the power of Twitter, and we do it for sports, we don't get into all that other stuff. We're a sports radio show and podcast. That's what we do. That's who we are. Give us a follow on Twitter at @sidelines_live. And folks over in Atlanta on 680 and Kicks 96.3, Alexander City, Central Alabama, Lake Martin, the Radio Alabama group. Love having y'all listening to us. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Jimmy and I are ready to talk some college football if y'all are. Otis Kirk, big one, man, 3-0 Razorbacks. I'm just sitting there looking at the schedule before I got you on here with us, and want to thank you so much for taking time to join us on this Thursday. But I'm looking at the schedule, your non-conference games. Nobody in the country is playing a non-conference schedule like Arkansas is. Cincinnati as an opener. They were a playoff team last year. You go to Provo to play BYU this year. That will not be easy.
No.
And you also got Liberty. I mean, the Razorbacks don't back down from anybody, to borrow the great song from Tom Petty that they sang in the fourth quarter down in the swamp. But, man, let's call the Hogs as the ECS House Industries Razorback Report gets underway with Otis Kirk.
Yes, Sam Pittman, we asked him who made that schedule, and he said, whoever's trying to get me fired. Yeah, whoever made that we asked him who made that non-conference schedule, and he said, whoever's trying to get me fired.
He's on it. You know what he is? He's authentic. But man, I'm just sitting there thinking about it. You saw what Liberty did going to the wire with Wake Forest, and Hugh Freeze went for 2. They didn't get it. And you know what? There's a lot of college football to be played. But man, isn't it a lot of fun? We talk college football every day. The Razorbacks in year 3 under Sam Pittman, and they served notice in game 1 when DeJuan Mathis was the quarterback for Georgia, came up there, and if he'd have stayed in the whole game, Arkansas wins. They made some changes, but he has woken up the Arkansas football program, which is a very proud, the 23rd winningest in the history of college football. What's your takeaway on this team up to this point? Things that you really like and things that keep you up at night, if you're a coach, that is.
Well, let's start with the keep you up at night. If you're a coach, it's got to be the secondary. It's been awful. I mean, they're last in the country in pass defense. They cannot keep giving up yards. The first game, which I did not get to see, I was in the hospital myself, but the Cincinnati game, they lost Jalen Cadline and Miles Slusher to injuries, and that really hurt them. Now, Slusher is coming back this week. Catalan's obviously out for the season, so that's a blow right there. And they don't have one solution to fix everything on that team, but they do have ways. Barry Odom can work magical ways to fix the defense, and I think there's solutions they can use to make that defense where it's not quite so porous in the secondary. The things I like, that's the biggest thing that I really don't like about. Well, I mean, it would keep me up at night if I were a coach. The offense has been pretty good. I mean, I know people always criticize the offensive coordinator, but I mean, they're putting up enough points to win these games, and they had some turnovers. They had some turnovers last week that really are uncharacteristic of the team. KJ Jefferson fumbled. Rocket Sanders fumbles going into the end zone or right at the 1 yard line. Those things I don't worry about too much because, like I said, those are really uncharacteristic. The one interception that KJ threw hit Trey Knox right in the hands, bounced into the hands of a Missouri State guy. That happens. Those are not issues like the secondary where it's just been consistently bad.
Yeah.
The running game, the offensive line. I promise you, I don't even know if there's some NFL teams that have much more experienced offensive line than this group. I mean, they have played together so long. They're not just 4 returning starters. They're returning starters that's been playing for quite some time. And then the receivers, they lost Traylon Burks to the Tennessee Titans, but Matt Landers, Jaden Hazelwood, Warren Thompson, Keatron Jackson have really stepped up. And they've got some young guys that can play. They haven't really played, but they've got some younger guys, true freshmen and redshirt freshmen who can help that team at receiver, but they haven't needed them yet. But, no, I like the team. I do. And the linebackers have been excellent. Drew Sanders, I don't know if anybody's got a better combo than Drew Sanders and Bumper Pool. That is one heck of a combo. The defensive line – I think that the defensive ends have been ahead of the interior linemen. I mean, those defensive ends, they lead the country in sacks, and it's because of those defensive ends. I'll tell you one thing Pittman does, and not just Pittman, but he and his staff, they really hit the transfer portal hard, and they do a great job at it because that's what all the receivers I named except Keatron are transfers. Warren came last year from Florida State, but the other 2 are new this year. But I mean, Dominic, Landon Jackson, Dwight McLaughlin, Latavius Brennan, Drew Sanders. I mean, those are dang good transfers, good SEC players. I mean, Drew Sanders, Latavius, they had and McLaughlin had success in the SEC, and they got him. Now, Drew Sanders is unbelievable. I mean, I was talking to a coach this summer, and I mean, he told me, he said, I'll be surprised if Arkansas gets to keep Drew Sanders over 1 year. He thought he was that good, and so far he probably has been. And so that's to answer your question. I know it's kind of long-winded, but that's what I like. The one thing I really worry about is the secondary. That's the problem. They've got to get I don't think they've got guys like you can plug in this guy and that guy, and it's going to fix the problems. But I do think there's some adjustments that Barry's going to have to figure out. I don't know what they are, but I'm not getting paid to coach. But Barry Odom's got to figure out some adjustments to get that secondary better because they can't keep giving up yardage like they are.
No, and I agree with you. And I think about this weekend's game against Texas A&M. Haynes King, not the answer at quarterback. They made the move to Max Johnson last Saturday, beat Miami 17-9. Miami's people just love to look back. It's like looking at old pictures of Marilyn Monroe from 60 years ago. People still get excited. There's something about Miami and the U. I mean, look, from 83 to 2001, they won 5 national championships. They had a great run. They ain't back yet. I don't see it. But now, and Jimmy Hodge is on with us up in Chicago, and he's going to come in here in a minute. But I got to say this. With Arkansas, and I brought this up yesterday about Nebraska, it was a shotgun wedding to put them in the Big Ten. They really belong in the Big 12, but they got tired of Texas. Arkansas felt the same way, I'm sure, for a long time. I know they did. I'm from Memphis.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Got a lot of Razorback friends. So now you've got this Southwest Classic at Jerry's World down in, Arlington, in Dallas, Fort Worth. And that's the largest alumni base for Arkansas in the country outside the state of Arkansas. And then you're bringing in Texas. And you've got Missouri. They're trying to make a rivalry there, but man, Oklahoma's coming in, and Arkansas's only played them 15 times. But if you're an Arkansas fan, you've got to be really excited because you're no longer out on the edge. Sergeant Schultz, I know nothing, used to worry about being sent to the Russian front. Arkansas for a long time has been the last link in the SEC out on the West.
Exactly.
Now they got a lot of company. This is a great time to be an Arkansas Razorback, especially if you go down there and TCB against A&M. Let's talk about that matchup.
Here's where I think Miami messed up last week. They kept trying to pass the football against them. What did App State do to Texas A&M? App State ran the ball right down their throats. I mean, kept the offense off the field. Just ran it right, kept A&M's offense off the field. They just ran it right down A&M's throat. I thought Arkansas really will take a similar approach. I mean, Arkansas is capable of passing or rushing, but I think the biggest thing you're going to see is Sam Pittman loves power football. And that's what happened. I mean, that's an understatement too. But Sam Pittman loves power football. That's how App State beat the Aggies. They just ran it. They took the ball and ran it right down their throats. And so I see Arkansas trying to do a similar thing. I mean, you think about it, Arkansas has a better offensive line than App State. They've got a better running back. They've got better quarterback. So there's no reason they can't have that. Now, A&M's going to be prepared for it, but are they good enough to stop it? Because they made adjustments during the App State game, and they never could stop App State. They just could. They were making adjustments, but the adjustments weren't working. And I know they're going to try to make adjustments. It's kind of like I think of their run defense, kind of like I do of Arkansas pass defense. You can make adjustments, but if you don't have the studs to put in there to stop it, it doesn't matter. I mean, A&M made adjustments against App State, but it didn't work. Just like Arkansas has made adjustments in all three games in pass defense, but they don't really have the fix it all solution. I mean, and if Arkansas can run the ball, and they're not going to be as patient as App State was. I know Kendall Browse's offense; he likes that hurry up. But I tell you one thing you can do off that too. Arkansas can run, power it down their throats, and then raise up and hit Matt Lander, Jaden Hazelwood, Keytron, or somebody for a touchdown. They did that to Missouri State last week. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. A&M's you can't get in the speed game with A&M because they've got speed. Yeah. They're a young team. They're very talented, but they're inexperienced, and they've got a lot of athleticism on that team. I think you've got to play your strength and make sure you got to play your strength against them and hope that's enough to beat them. And I think it is. I really do. I think Arkansas can run the ball on the Aggies, and I think they will. But then again, Arkansas has got to do two things in that sense. They've got to cut out the penalties, and they've got to not turn the ball over. And I think the fumble last week, like I said, I think those were uncharacteristic simply because who did them. But they cannot keep doing that. And the penalties have been there most of the season. They did cut back on the second half Saturday night, and that helped them win the game. They probably don't win the game if they don't cut back on those penalties. Because if you remember, Bryce Stevens had two pretty good punt returns in the first half. Both of them got called back because of holding. There's no holding. That was the first thing I looked for when Bryce scored, was see if there's any yellow flags on the field. Yeah, if there's any laundry out there, because and that's what there wasn't, and that made a big difference. Now, but I think Arkansas can win the game, but they're going to have to play a great game because A&M is talented. There's no doubt about that. They've got I'm not going to say they've got as much talent as anybody in college because I think Georgia and Alabama are simply just loaded, but they've got a lot of talent. They proved that last year. They lost to Arkansas last year, but they came back and beat Alabama. So, I mean, they can beat anybody. But I think Arkansas can take them if Arkansas plays their game. But it's going to take a good effort. It's going to take a clean effort by Arkansas. What I mean by that, they just can't have a lot of penalties and turnovers, because if they do, and another key, I think, for the Hogs is when you get in the red zone, get 7, not 3. I think because I think it's going to be a pretty close game. But when you get in the red zone, you better get 7 instead of 3. 3's better than nothing, obviously. I mean, I realize that. But, boy, 7 is just so important down there. And a game where it's this close, because I think it's going to be a close game. I hear people saying Arkansas win by 3 or 4 touchdowns. I'm not buying that. I think Arkansas I think Arkansas is a better team, but they've got some issues that can cause. If Johnson gets to stay on the field, I don't care. I know he's really known for his passing, but I think Arkansas can make him look like a much better passer if he stays on the field. And that's the one thing. If you're an Arkansas fan or whatever, that's the one thing you don't want is Johnson to go off passing against the Hogs, and he's capable of doing it against that secondary if you let him stay on the field and do it.
That's why it's going to be so important. We're about to go to a break. It's going to be critical that Arkansas is able to chew up the clock, eat up clock with the running game. And again, that's their MO. I mean, that's what they do, and that's what they do really well. They impose their will. I think Arkansas led the SEC in rushing last year. Ole Miss is running the ball really well this year. But I look at A&M, and I know Jimmy's got some questions for you. We're going to come back after the break, but I didn't want to get started and then have to stop because it is hard to remember sometimes during the break. Jimmy's reminding me of that. But I look at Arkansas, and I see this team. Miles Slusher got hurt in the first game. Jalen Catlin got hurt. These are big-time players. And look at Jalen Catlin. He's a Texas kid. Bumper Pools from Lucas, Texas. Arkansas needs this game, and they need to beat Texas like they did last year because it's so critical. But, all those years historically when Arkansas was in the Southwest Conference, they still won 13 Southwest Conference championships. I mean, the years when Harold Horton was there and Tim Horton were there, they won 5. They've had a lot of success. And people that if you're not familiar with how big college football is in Arkansas and Texas, you're going to see it on display Saturday down at Jerry's World. Let's take a quick break, come back with Otis Kirk and Jimmy Hodge. I know you've got some questions. We're going to be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne broadcasting live sidelines on this Thursday from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. Check them out on the website, redriverfordtoyota.com. They are open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. What they say about Wynne, Otis, you've been here before. The city with a smile, the can-do city, the city on the other side of the ridge, or that depends on which side of Crowley's Ridge or Crowley's Ridge that you live on. Great people over here. Yeah. They'll do business with you if you're a Razorback, a Red Wolf, a Tiger. It doesn't matter. They're great people over here. Justin Wynn, the general manager, Rusty Howard, and Greg Smith, sales managers out there. Over 700 used cars and trucks and SUVs. Check them out on the website, redriverfordtoyota.com. And they actually will do this. You find a vehicle you like, you can get the process done online, work with them, and they will deliver anywhere you want to be delivered to. Jimmy Hodge, I know you got some questions for Otis Kirk, and let's talk about these Razorbacks. And we hadn't talked much about the Missouri State game, but Jimmy, ask away.
Yeah, Otis, I don't really have questions. I kind of have observations, and in regard to your analysis of what you've seen so far. But going back to the A&M game last year, I thought Arkansas pretty much controlled the line of scrimmage for most of 3 quarters against an experienced A&M defensive front. And I thought what almost turned the game around was Arkansas's failure to convert a huge 4th and 1 at I don't know, the 17, 18-yard line of A&M. Had they made that one, I think they were in a position to pull away and win easily. They didn't, and I think A&M hit a long touchdown a completion for about 75 yards, and all of a sudden you're in a battle. And I was just curious how you would describe Arkansas in short yardage situations this year, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, because last year that was an area of concern for them. And in regard to this matchup Saturday, you've got to think the Hogs feel really confident about being able to run the ball against, as you mentioned, a talented but inexperienced A&M front. And if they're able to do that, it's going to allow them to take a lot of time off the clock. And lots of times, especially with new personnel on offense, Johnson being the new quarterback, sometimes if you're standing on that sideline for a long time on the offensive end, you get a little anxious if that opponent uses up a lot of time and it turns out to be a touchdown drive, and you can get a little over anxious.
Well, yeah, that's true. And one thing, you know, and I said it earlier, and you said it, but keeping the A&M offense on the sideline. But I'll tell you another thing it does when you're controlling the ball. It keeps your secondary on the sideline if you're Arkansas.
I agree.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Arkansas secondary on the sideline. And everything you said is true. I mean, it does. It keeps their offense. And I said that earlier. But I'm sitting here thinking, well, it also keeps that Arkansas secondary on. But no, I think one thing, too, if you remember last year, though, in the second half of that game, on the first play, KJ Jefferson had a running play, and he had on the side. He had some equipment on the sideline, and he got hurt. And Malik Hornsby had to play a lot of that third quarter. And I think I agree with you. I thought Arkansas was on the verge of blowing them out had KJ not gotten hurt. But their short yardage has been pretty good this year. I mean, they've been able to convert, except for the Rocket Sanders fumble down there, the KJ Jefferson fumble. We talked about that, though. But no, I think the short yardage is fine. Like I said, Arkansas has got one of the more experienced offensive lines in any level of football. I'm not saying, I mean, they're very good, but in college football, these guys have not just we say 4 returning starters, but we forget these guys have been 2, 3. Stromberg's starting his 4th year at Arkansas. So, I mean, these guys have been here for a while. They play well together. Luke Jones has stepped right into that left tackle spot. I think Arkansas will be fine if they run the football and they avoid the penalties and turnovers. I think they're going to be fine, because that's what App State did. App State just simply ran it right down A&M's throats. And I'll never believe that Arkansas doesn't have better offensive line, better quarterback, better running back than App State. Now, that's not taking anything away from App State. They're good. But if they were better than Arkansas, they'd probably be ranked higher than 10th. So, I mean, they're not. And so, and Arkansas is an SEC school, but A&M, you cannot get in a speed game, as I said earlier, you know, when we were talking. You've got to go at A&M. You go outside. They've got a lot of speed. They've got athleticism. And one thing I will say this to add to our conversation, I think Arkansas's got to jump on them early, because this is a young A&M team. We've all agreed on that. You let them stay in the game and get confidence. I'm going to tell you, that's what Miami did. They let them stay in the game. And I was at Arkansas, so I didn't get to see all the game. I got to see most of the 4th quarter. I got home in time to see that. But I'm just telling you, you let A&M stay in this game, and it gets to the 4th quarter, you're in dangerous territory, because there's a lot of talent on that team. So Arkansas has got to really, to me, do what you said. They've got to come out, take it to them early, make the short yardage, and that go to the red zone when you get down there. And as I said earlier, I think you've got to get 7 instead of 3. 3, you can take it, but you don't want 4 or 5 threes. You want to get, you know, if you get down there 5 times and you get 3 or 4 touchdowns, you're okay, and then get the field goal. But you can't go down there. I've seen teams get down there 4 and 5 times and have 15 points to show for it. Can't do that.
In regard to Arkansas's secondary, and of course, I agree, the loss of Catalan is catastrophic. But have you been surprised by the fact that really on the A&M side of the ledger in the receiving core, that Anaya Smith up to this point has been just a non-factor? They just really haven't used him at all. We all know about his legal issues that occurred just before SEC Media Days. And then also, I don't think they've used A-Chain nearly as much as they should. And again, when you look at some of the opportunities they can have in this particular game, if you can get the football to guys like this out in space, and especially in the vertical passing game, they've really got a lot of opportunities here. But have you been as perplexed as I have that they really haven't gotten the ball to those guys as much as they should, at least in my opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't been able to watch as much A&M as I'd like, but yeah, I mean, those are your weapons. That's one thing that Sam Pittman does. I think we all agree. He got KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, Jaden Hazelwood, and Matt Landers. He gets the ball to him. And yeah, I mean, I think one thing probably hurt them, they didn't have the ball much against A&M. I mean, I'm sorry, against App State. But that's, if you've got weapons like those two, and those two have got Arkansas scared to death, I'm not going to lie to you. Arkansas knows what they're capable of, and against this secondary, they're very capable of going off on Saturday. But Arkansas has got to, be aware of that. But A&M, yeah, I mean, to me, it goes back to the old coaches, the old saying, feed your studs. I mean, if you've got weapons like those two kids, they've got to touch the ball. Man, you've got to. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier. If you remember, I said, take your strength and and beat A&M with that. If you can't beat them with your strength, you're not going to beat them anyway. And so A&M, they've got to use their strengths, and they haven't done it to the degree that we all think they probably should have. But they've got a chance to go off this Saturday if they get. They can line up that Arkansas secondary, but Arkansas has got to, be aware of that. They may have to double team Smith. I know he hasn't been that big a factor so far, and he's had some off the field issues. But Arkansas, that's the last thing Arkansas needs Saturday is the two kids you just mentioned going off. If they do, Arkansas is in trouble.
Yeah, and one thing, we're about out of time for this segment, and really appreciate you being on with us. But the best cure for an ailing secondary is a great pass rush. That's going to be critical. And Drew Sanders could have a breakout game Saturday. I think he will.
Arkansas leads the country in sacks, and that's one thing that has helped the secondary as much as it has. As Landon Jackson came on last week, Zach Williams, Jordan Dominic, and then, of course, as you said, Drew Sanders. There's probably not been a better defensive player in the country than Drew Sanders so far. Now, I mean, I'm not saying he's the best. I'm just saying performance-wise, he's played as well as anybody probably the first 3 weeks. Now, Jordan Dominic, Zach Williams, Landon Jackson, Jashad Stewart, those guys have got to help, and they've got to get better play from the interior. Sam's been happy with the interior play on the defensive line. I'd like to see him get a little bit more punch from in there, maybe in the pass rush stuff. And I thought Missouri State ran at him a few times and had a little bit of success. But overall, I think Arkansas's pass rush has got to be what helps the secondary, because I'm Slusher getting Miles Slusher back will help. There's no doubt that will help, but it's not going to solve everything. And that's where you do get that's the one solution Arkansas has that probably can help them more than anything, is have that continue that strong pass rush.
Yeah, look, great stuff, Otis. Love having you back on here with us. You and Dudley Dawson just give us a unbelievable coverage of Razorbacks, and tell people how they can follow you, and we'll let you get rolling with your day. But always love having Dudley on, and now having you on. So if one of the two of you can't do it, we are Razorback strong. So let people know, because I know you also do stuff with Pig Trail Nation.
Yeah, it's Otis Kirk 23 on Twitter. I work for Hogville along with Dudley, and then Pig Trail Nation. I do a recruiting segment on Sundays there on the recruiting segment, football recruiting segment. I work for probably about 12 or 13 newspapers, including some in the Forest City paper, some of them in your part of the woods. I took over the Nate Allen Sports Service. Nate had cancer and had to give it up, and I took that over. So, man, you can find my ugly face about anywhere you look, because it's going to be somewhere if it's related to the Razorbacks. I always say I've got a great face for the radio and a voice for the newspaper. So,
let me ask you this: which town are you from in Arkansas?
I live in Fayetteville. I used to live in Mena. I lived in Mena for 40. Well, I moved up here in 1997. I moved
Okay.
up here in 1997 to Fayetteville and been here ever since.
Well, I tell
Originally
you what.
from Lima, though.
Okay, from Mina over there in the Ouachita Mountains.
Yes, sir. Ouachita Mountains, Rich Mountain. It's beautiful there, but
Oh God,
I love Fayetteville, man. I love
Hey,
Fayetteville.
look, I live in Memphis. We're in parking at the Cherry Farm all the time, and we duck hunt. We just picked up a new place in Newport. I told Dudley about, and everybody's all excited. They said they got a Sonic and they got hotels there, and we got some nice timber over there. I mean, you can't beat it, man. Listen, the great thing about it is, when Arkansas plays those games late November when duck season starts, you go to the games. Only they need to come up with a Razorback camo pattern in that red, because everybody showing up in their duck hunting gear. So many people do, but it's just it's a great time of year. And I'm gonna tell you what, Sam Pittman, he's authentic, and he's got the Razorback fans just all rowing in the same direction. And you got a fun job covering them. But thanks so much for being on here with us, and look forward to having you on again.
Thank you, man. And you guys, appreciate y'all.
All right. Same here. Appreciate the work you do. Let's switch gears and head down to Tuscaloosa, WVUA TV 23, Gary Harris and Tide 100.9. And Jimmy, man, Miles Slusher is going to be back this weekend. Jalen Catlin, we know about his loss. That's a big loss. They're leading the nation in sacks to this point. The team that's been the best at that for last several years has been Pitt. And Alabama with Dallas Turner and Will Anderson, they've got a lot of talent there on the rush. But I think Alabama got their first defensive turnover just this past weekend against La Monroe, pick 6 for Will Anderson. What's the trend here?
Well, I think that Sark just had a brilliant game plan against Bama, and obviously they've been working on this game plan for months, and they were really sharp. They had a lot of quick throws, which we all know negates the pass rush, and almost from the very start, Texas offensively really had Alabama off balance, off kilter, and Texas just got on a roll. They were really in a nice flow. And once you have success early in the game with a rabid crowd like they had in Austin behind them, they just played well for most of the ball game. And even after Quinn Ewers was injured with the bruised clavicle, and Hudson Card came in and he got injured and couldn't run at all, but still they played well. So it was just one of those days where they, in my mind, Alabama caught Texas offensively on their A game.
Yeah.
And it was just a great matchup. And the fact that they were able, Alabama that is, to overcome, a lot of obstacles that day, 120 degrees on the field, and it was 120 degrees for both teams. But it seemed like Texas was just raring to go from the opening kickoff. And we all saw that Alabama had their hands full all day, but they found a way to pull it out at the end.
Yeah, they did. Gary Harris, I think I hear him in the background there, down in Tuscaloosa. Gary, look, this weekend, Vanderbilt comes to town. Nick Saban's going to find something to worry about, but this should be a game Alabama dominates. What does Alabama need to get better at? This is one of those games where, it's about Alabama getting better against whoever they play, because they got Arkansas the following week up in Fayetteville.
Yeah, I think everything is the answer, Rob, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
I think that I had this discussion with somebody in the sports office yesterday at the TV station that was, going on about the schedule and, these games don't provide anything at all. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, I understand as a fan last week, and you may not have, enjoyed that game as much as you might some others, but the reason Nick Saban preaches the way that he does in regards to these games is not only should you respect your opponent regardless of who it is, but you said it, you've got to get better in these games. You've got to work on things and you've got to know things about your team so that when you go to Arkansas, you have improved and you're ready to go in that environment. And that's what, a ULM game can provide, or even this Vanderbilt game as an SEC game. There's some things maybe that you can do, that you can look at, that once you get, when they went to Texas, or when they go to Fayetteville, or when they go to Knoxville, there's no experimenting, and you got to know certain things about your team. And you're not going to find out, some things in that game other than really where you're at, because those teams are going to be ready to go. So I think there's always something to be gained from playing an opponent, and whether fans like it or not, unless everybody else is going to line up and play 12 quality FBS teams, then you can't do it. So you'd be shorting yourself. So there's always something that you need to find out about your team. And last week against ULM,
Gary, hold those thoughts if you don't mind. We're going to take a quick break because I totally agree with what you're saying. And it's what it is. It's about you getting better. Don't worry about who you're playing after this on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Gary, I'd just be willing to bet that discussion you had in the at the TV station last night may have been with one of the younger people that's just grown up watching Alabama dominate the way they have the last 14 years. If you've seen a lot of football, you do know that you got to use every game. Some of these games are glorified scrimmages. I understand that. You do too. So does Jimmy. But if you're not getting better in areas where you need to improve and maintaining and getting better at what you're good at, then you can win a game but lose in a crazy sort of way, because the games just get bigger with every coming week. So that's I like your take on that, and I think that's exactly what it is. And so fans, that's why you go to the game. You're not going to see Alabama play Vanderbilt. You're going to see Alabama play. And it doesn't matter who they're playing. That's how I've always looked at it. I'm going to see Auburn play. I don't care who they're playing. Why are you going to this game or that game? It doesn't matter. I'm going to see my school. And that's when you develop a really strong fan base. Jimmy, jump in here with Gary Harris down at Tide 100.9 and Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, Gary, I'd like to find out who that person was you were talking to at the TV station, because I'd like to ask Ryan Day if he would like to have a schedule that included road trips to Austin at 11 in the morning and a 120-degree heat index on the field, a road game at Fayetteville on October 1st, going on the road against Tennessee's offense, and then you have a visit to Baton Rouge on the first Saturday in November on a Saturday night, who under Brian Kelly is going to be a handful by the time that a 9th or 10th game rolls around. And then following what's sure to be a Saturday night game there, then you get Ole Miss the very next week in Oxford. I'd like to find a list of coaches there that would like to have that road schedule to face this year.
Yeah, obviously, when you play in the SEC West, you're gonna get tested. You don't have to worry about strength of schedule; it's going to take care of itself. But getting back to Jimmy and Rob to what we were talking about in regards to every game being important, and another thing about the game last week is, people want to play. Football players want to play in the games, and you got a lot of young players and a lot of players that haven't played much football that are out there during the week on the scout team or whatever their role may be in practice. and they're working just as hard as the guys that are starting. And to have an opportunity for them to get into a game and play, whether it's young players that are on scholarship, in some cases walk-on players, that's valuable too. And that builds, team unity, and the starting players love to see those guys get an opportunity. So those games provide a lot in regards to how you build your team. This Saturday too is an SEC game. And, I don't care who it is in the SEC, and in this case, it's Vanderbilt. And you can say, well, you're getting opened up against Vanderbilt. It's still a conference game. So, I think things are ratcheted up naturally because of that. And Alabama, I know, is a 40-plus point favorite, but Vanderbilt's in the SEC. And if you were to lose that game, it would count against your SEC schedule, just like a loss to, LSU or Arkansas would. So you've got to be ready to go in that regard. And I want to give Vanderbilt credit. Again, people will say, oh, look at who they beat. 3-1 is 3-1. And when you're where Vanderbilt is, to get to 3-1, even if they don't win a conference game, and they may not, I don't know. I think they will. But even if they don't, to win 3 out of their first 4 with where that program is, that's an accomplishment. To go on the road to Northern Illinois, now why they're going to Northern Illinois in the first place, I don't know, as an SEC team. But to go to Northern Illinois and win that football game on the road like that, that's a big win for Vanderbilt. So I want to give them some credit. I like Clark Lee. I think that, he played there. He understands the lay of the land. He knows the situation with it being a high-achieving academic institution and a private school, and some things at Vanderbilt are different than they are at the other 13 SEC institutions. But he understands that, and he knows the inner workings of that university. And I think he's going to do a good job there. We've seen in the past that you can have some success at Vanderbilt. You can get to some bowl games, and we saw it with James Franklin. We saw it years ago with George McIntyre. Even Bobby Johnson had some success. So I think that Clark Lee's done a good job. But for Alabama, man, this is an SEC game. So when I hear people just kind of trying to throw Vanderbilt in there with ULM and Utah State, I say, wait a minute now. This is an SEC team, and it's an SEC game, and it's the SEC schedule. So I think it's a big game. And you guys have talked to me long enough. I'm no coach. I don't know how to break down a game the way a coach does, but I've always felt like I look at things like a coach, and that I can find a reason to respect any opponent on the schedule. And certainly with Vanderbilt. And right now, to be honest with you guys, we'll see how it plays out. I think they're going to win a conference game. I think they're better than Missouri right now. That's just my take after a few weeks. I think Vanderbilt's a better football team than Missouri, and maybe better than another team or two in the SEC. We shall see. But for Alabama, it's an SEC game, and that really should be enough to get the fans excited. If they can't get excited about playing a conference game, then I don't, I have to ask them about their fandom.
Hey, enjoy the success when you got it. Try losing one of those games. That's right. And all the games are big at this level. I'm with Jimmy. I would love to talk to that person that said that, but people.
No, they're one of my sports interns.
Yeah.
They don't think it's a big game unless it's a 2:30 kickoff on CBS or something. They see. You're right. They've grown up at a time where they think Alabama dominates everybody. And if Alabama doesn't, regardless of who it is, doesn't win by 2 or 3 touchdowns, it's a bad game.
Well, and I said this on the show a few weeks ago. These folks that say, it's just a waste if Alabama doesn't win the national championship. We hear them on these national shows. You know what I'm talking about. I'd love to take these blowhards in the locker room after a loss and say that to Will Anderson to his face. Say that to Dallas Turner. You know where I'm going with that. I'm sorry, but maybe these people can't get out of their parents' back house or their basement. Losers. Anyway, Gary, you are very smart. And by the way, I was watching Jimmy. Have you watched recently WVUA TV 23, the Tuesday night program at 6:30 p.m. that Gary Harris and Rodney Orr do? Y'all do a great job with that. You and Rodney have a great chemistry. You really know football, and you're calm. Rodney's calm, and Rodney lived in Texas long enough to know how to deal with people that are, a little boisterous and full of themselves and stuff. And he understands when you're playing Texas, what you got to deal with. But at the same time, Texas coming in the SEC is going to make the league better in terms of it's going to open up the state of Texas more than it already is open for people to recruit out there. And he also understands that they like to talk about how much money they have and all. We got money at the other SEC schools, not as much as they do. And I don't think our boosters are as willing to spend it like they do. But, that Jimmy, Gary, that was a huge game for Texas. And then you brought this up before the game. It was also big for Alabama. Jimmy's right. Texas threw everything they had at Alabama. And if you're an Alabama fan, you got to say, all that being said, Alabama still got the win. They found a way to do it. That's big, and that goes a long way. And there are going to be a lot of tight games as the season goes along, and they're going to remember how they got through that one, what it took to win. That's why winning close games makes your team closer.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I do remember that discussion very well that we had that week, the three of us, and I was leery of Texas. And I told you guys.
You were very wary.
I had a really good feel for what the environment was going to be like. And having been around Sark, I had a really good feel for how Texas was going to play. So I was concerned about that game. And I said it then to you. I said, you're right. It's a big game for Texas. It's a big game for Alabama. And I still believe that. That's a game that Alabama got out of there with a 1-point win thanks to Will Rockard's right leg. But the season right now, the tenor of the season would be completely different if he had missed that field goal, or if Alabama had not gotten down there, if Bryce Young had gotten sacked on that corner blitz. The season would be different. That's not to mean that Alabama couldn't have come back from that. If Alabama runs the table after that loss and goes 11-1 and goes 8-0 in the SEC and goes to the SEC championship game and wins it, they're going to go to the playoff regardless. But the season would feel different, and your margin for error would be nil. And we've talked about this a lot. It's about when you play these games, not necessarily who you play. And I still think Texas is going to have a good football team, but they may lose a couple of games. And if they do, people will look back and say, they barely beat an overrated Texas team. Well, on that day, Texas was very good. And in that situation, they provided a heck of a test for Alabama. And, hopefully Alabama is going to get better. I think Alabama needs to get better. I think Alabama needs to improve, as every team's looking to do. They need to avoid injuries. This team is not at a point where in this conference that if they don't get better, if they don't improve, they're going to lose a game or two. I believe that. They're not right now where they need to get to be the kind of team they want to be. And if they stay where they're at, I think they'll lose a game or two. So there's challenges out there for Alabama, and they're no different than any other team. Maybe their talent level's higher than most teams, but still, as most coaches have told me, you either get better or you get worse. Very rarely do you stay the same. And if you don't get better, then you've got some tough days coming ahead. And I think for Nick Saban and this coaching staff, that's the challenge, to continue to develop some young players, continue to bring this offensive line around. I think they've got to get better in the run game. They were effective at times against ULM, but when I say that, I'm talking about the speed sweeps and the perimeter runs. I'm thinking about what Brian Robinson brought them last year. A lot of Alabama fans were like, "Oh, Brian Robinson's boring." Well, he was moving the chains. He averaging 4 or 5 yards a carry, gets it done. And I think Alabama's run game between the tackles, a power run game, it has got to get better. And I think they got to come off the ball and knock some people around. I think the receiving core is going to continue to improve. There's enough talent there. Obviously, you've got the quarterback. That. I still think that the tight end position with Cam Latu back, and they're bringing the freshmen along now. So there's a lot. The good news for Alabama is there's a chance to get a lot better, and I think that they need to do that. If they don't do that, then I don't think they're going to have the kind of season that they want to have or the fans want to see them have. So I think for Alabama, they're like a lot of teams. They need to improve. Now, maybe Georgia might be that team that kind of where Alabama was a few years ago. They just come out of the gate great and they stay great. But for most teams, you got to get better as the season goes along.
Jimmy, how do you argue with that? Spot on.
Yeah, and I'd like to get Gary's observation on just the overall goal for Saturday's game against Vandy, because in my mind, it's really critical for Alabama's defensive front to stop that Vandy running game cold. Not because, Vandy's got a great running game or anything, but you have to get in the proper frame of mind to face an Arkansas team in Fayetteville a week from Saturday that has a really strong running game. Their offensive line's really good. They're experienced. They ran the ball down South Carolina's throat for like 295 yards. They averaged almost 6 yards a carry. And that's really what keys their offense. And, of course, we all know how good Jefferson is. But I think it's just important for Alabama, actually, on both sides of the ball. As you mentioned, they really need to improve in their short yardage running game, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. They don't have a Brian Robinson who was great in those situations. And you got to really focus on, if you don't have that type of running back, then you got to knock that defensive lineman you're faced up against off the ball far enough to where you can make that foot, 2 feet on 4th down situations, 3rd down situations. So I think it's really critical for Alabama to be razor sharp on every or in every phase of the game Saturday, to be ready for what's going to be a hostile environment in Fayetteville. And they are more than anxious to erase that 15-game losing streak against the Tide.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, I don't care what you run at this level of football. When you get into conference play, it's still a line of scrimmage game. And for Alabama, they went for it on 4th and 1 at Texas and didn't make it. Roydell Williamson got stopped short, and then they had a 4th and 2 against ULM and tried to throw the football and didn't make it. So, that's two 4th downs that they've come up short on. And I'm with you, Jimmy. I think that this weekend there needs to be a physicality about their play. And Vanderbilt will challenge you. They do some things that are different on offense, and they challenge your defense for the run fits, for some of the option tendencies that they have, and they're going to challenge you in different ways. But I think you're right, Jimmy, in that Alabama needs to establish the line of scrimmage early in this game on both sides and dominate and feel good about what they're doing when they go to Fayetteville, because you're 100% correct. Fayetteville, Arkansas is going to be a tough place to play. And that Arkansas football team, with what Sam Pittman has brought to them, they've got a physicality about them. If you don't line up on either side of the ball, and you're not ready to go jaw to jaw, you're going to be in trouble, because they're going to jack your jaws. I mean, that's just the way they play. And the quarterback can run over you. I mean, he doesn't, it helps if you block for him, but he's the kind of guy that even if the blocking's not there and you got a safety or a corner or even a linebacker coming up to hit him, sometimes he can take care of that player by himself. So I'm with you completely in that this game needs to be a tone setter for Alabama, because a week from Saturday, they're going to go into a situation where they're going to get challenged physically, and they need to go ahead and be prepared for that. And you can start being prepared for that by handling a Vanderbilt team that is going to present some challenges on Saturday.
Guys, nobody's talking about this. Jimmy, I know we haven't lately. Gary, I'm not seeing many targeting calls this season. Are the players adapting and realizing, either you're going to do it and hit this way, or you're going to get called for targeting? But Steve Shaw, coordinator of NCAA officials, was on the show with us quite a few times this past offseason. He said last year there was one targeting call every 5 games. So, it's not as many as we think, but there are a lot in the SEC. And, there's some players that have multiple infractions. But what do you attribute that to, Gary?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I'm happy about that.
I am too.
It's twofold. I think the players are learning. The rule's been in place long enough that they've made some adjustments on how to tackle and how to get that shoulder in there, and sometimes move their head to the side. There are going to be times when it's going to happen. It's just inevitable. Two guys, an offensive player and a defensive player, lower their head at the same time. Sometimes you get it, and it just happens. But I think also the officials have adjusted. I think that when it first came in as a rule, it seemed like any time there was a hard hit and you saw the head lowered, that the flag was thrown immediately, and it was called targeting just based on the officials were looking for it and trying to establish it. And I think now they are better at seeing that there are a lot of times that there are what we see that are big hits, but it isn't necessarily the crown of the helmet making the first contact.
Yeah, Gary,
that's another thing.
Yeah, can you hold these thoughts? We're going to take a quick break. But one more question.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Gary, Bo Carter will be joining us here momentarily. We're going to have Ken Capps on after that. And it's interesting watching. That's why I wanted to ask Gary Harris. Check him out. Channel 23, WVUA TV 23 in Tuscaloosa, Tide 100.9. Knows his Alabama and college football inside out. The memo got out, but again, I think Gary take that. I think the officials have adapted as well because we're just not seeing it. I think everybody saw that hit in the first quarter from Auburn linebacker Owen Papo on Penn State's quarterback, and people were just waiting for the other shoe to drop, but there wasn't a targeting call. But it wasn't targeting. It was just a good hit. You can't hide the fact football is a violent, physical. It's a collision league, as Ben Troop says the NFL is. So too is the SEC. But I think it's making these players play smarter, and now you're starting to see better fundamental football. Instead of worrying about getting called for targeting, the guys are now playing football like they were taught to do. We got a minute or two before Bo gets on. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the officials on the field have a lot of leeway. I think they don't have to worry about having to throw a flag if they're not sure at the time whether the hit is targeting or not, because the replay guy can make the right call. I think it's a lot harder to take off a targeting call that's originally flagged, maybe, than it is when it's not. And the replay guy truly is the most important part of the equation, because even if the call is originally missed, he has the chance to fix it, you know. And yeah, I've only seen maybe 2 or 3 missed calls, but one was just blatant. And that was early in that Florida-Kentucky game where Will Levis, not only was his helmet separated from his head, I thought his head was also going to be coming along with it. And they looked at it for 5 minutes and ruled it wasn't targeting. And I'm just going to myself, if that's not targeting, they might as well just get rid of the rule, you know. But other than that, for the most part, they've done a really good job with it. And yeah, it's been a great move, because it used to be 10 years ago when a receiver ran across the middle and a pass was overthrown for 5 yards, man, that safety or a defensive back, you could just see him drawing a bead on that guy for a free shot. And it was so dangerous, and they don't even think about it now because they know they're going to get flagged. And not only that, but they're going to miss a game too. So yeah, that's been a great development as far as just protecting players from unnecessary hits like that.
I agree. And look, it's about player safety, like Coach Safely with Kevin Skarbinski, Jack Crow down in Birmingham. We're not trying to make football soft. I mean, one of my friends said we're making the quarterbacks like China plates now. And in football, you cannot hide. If you're doing it right and you hit hard, you get hit by Will Anderson, it's the equivalent of being hit by a car. And that's just how it is. Bo Carter joins us out in Dallas right now. Bo, we got a great one going right now, talking about the decline so far this season. And I'm hoping we can get Steve Shaw, coordinator of NCAA officials, back on the show. Love to have him on tomorrow, seeing if he can make it. But there are fewer targeting calls to this point. And, Gary Harris was on. Jimmy, we've been talking about it. The officials are more adapted to what hits are and aren't. That is a sign they've been working, led by Steve Shaw and his team. And number two, the players are learning what's acceptable and what's not. But you cannot hide the fact football is a physical game. It's a collision sport, and you cannot turn it into, girls lacrosse. It's not going to happen.
That's absolutely true. And I think during the spring too, Rob, they really hit the high points about, hey, at the spring games and practice, et cetera, be sure, we're really emphasizing targeting this year, and we're not going to let anything get. In the last couple of years, they've really called it closely, as you and Jimmy have seen. So it's and I think Steve Shaw's done a tremendous job. They've gotten the word to all the coordinating supervisors at each one of the conferences and saying, hey, it's not going to be tolerated, and stop teaching the players to go after the head.
Yeah. Well, and that is I saw Steve Shaw, and I wanted to go talk to him when I was at the Coach Safely Foundation dinner at Vestavia Hills Country Club back August 22nd. It was absolutely packed. But I'm impressed with his behind the scenes work, the getting the message and working. And a lot of times we'll request him to be on sidelines if he can do it. But he's got to meet with all the different conference official heads. And so there's so much that he's in charge of. But, man, when he's on the show, he really does a great job of shedding light on what is happening out there. All right, we got to ask you now, over in Dallas, Big 12 up to this point, what's going on out there, your thoughts on early season, the first three games. And I know Jimmy has been praising Lance Leopold. We talked about his career and all, but my gosh, Kansas goes on the road. Jimmy talked about this yesterday and wins by 3 touchdowns at Houston School, coming into the Big 12. What in Slim Pickens? Here he is. What in the wide world of sunflower seeds is going on in Kansas? I mean, I thought they were going to drop football. Honestly, I did.
It's a crazy. First they beat West Virginia on the road, then they beat Houston on the road, and Lance Leipold, again, he did a great job at Buffalo. Got them to bowl games. They've been kind of dormant for years, and man, this guy. Coaching genius. I think usually this time of year, everybody's waiting for basketball practice to start. So he's got they'll have some big crowds the upcoming game. And they're about to do like a $300 million remodel job on old Memorial Stadium, which Newt Rockney took a summer off and helped pour concrete for it like 1922. True story.
You can't make this stuff up, Bo Carter.
Notre Dame wasn't paying him enough money, I guess. So he went to Lawrence.
Wow. Well, I mean, I'm just, again, I wonder when the Big 12, let's talk a little about real quick, because I know Jimmy's got some questions for you, but I want to know your take on more about this new commissioner they've got out there, because he is not playing around. He's serious about saving football in the heartland.
Well, he is. And the big thing, Rob and Jimmy, that they emphasized when they hired him, he's like one of the experts national on sports digital communications. So, I mean, as they're negotiating the new contract this year, he's going to place a lot of emphasis on ESPN Plus, all the digital formats or whatever. Now, the way kids are, you guys know, over the 19 to 35 demographic, they're all watching stuff on their phones or iPads. So,
yeah, absolutely. It's like going, look up, son, look up.
That's right. Regular television's becoming archaic, but no, the new commissioner's done a great job. They just had a big office reorganization, and he's bringing in a guy from the American, I think, his director of football operations. So they're going to have a really. They just lost Ed Stewart to the USC, former Nebraska linebacker. There was at the Big 12 for about 16 years. So he's putting a special emphasis on football and getting these new TV rights done.
Yeah. Trev Alberts, former defensive lineman for Nebraska, is the AD in Lincoln. He's got a big decision to make. who's the new coach going to be? What are you hearing out there? Some of the top names to come to Nebraska. That is the fourth winningest program in the history of college football. Billions in their endowment. Again, there's $750 billion in endowments nationwide.
Exactly.
What are they doing with them? Because the cost of tuition is doing nothing but going up. But anyway, they don't lack for money at Nebraska, but they do lack for players right there in their geographical footprint. They got to fix that if they want to be successful. We all know that. Give me some names.
Well, I was going to say Dave Aranda at Baylor got mentioned a couple of times. They've talked, they might even go after Lincoln Riley, or who knows. I tell you, they're probably. I've seen like 10 or 15 names mentioned. Wish they could clone Tom Osborne and make him 25 years younger. There are a lot of fans that would love to see that. But you're right, Rob and Jimmy. They sort of lost that recruiting base that they had. If y'all remember, they had the great walk-on program in the 60s and 70s. They'd have 150 kids from Nebraska. The JCs groups in each one of these little towns would, if the kids didn't make the team, they would get a partial scholarship academic scholarship from the JC chapter. So then I don't know. They sort of I don't know whether the NCAA cut it out or Nebraska sort of wavered away, but for them to have 6 losing seasons the last 25 years is really unheard of.
I mean, Tom Osborne wins 3 national championships in his last 4 years there. And he averaged almost 10 wins a year back mainly when we played 11 games a year. It's absolutely is incredible. Jimmy, you're looking at it and you've got a great take on this stuff and you got questions for Bo, but he's out there in the Metroplex. And he mentioned Dave Aranda. He mentioned Lincoln Riley. Wow. Nebraska gets somebody like that, Jimmy. They could fix that mess, I think.
Well, like I said, the story that came out yesterday in The Athletic was the 3 most prominent names that have emerged at this point in the early stages have been Dave O'Brien, Matt Campbell, and Lance Leipold. Mm-hmm. And any of those three choices would be tremendous. And Bo, I said yesterday, I don't think people realize the incredible job that Bill O'Brien did those 2 years he was at Penn State to fix that mess that I don't know that more than 3 or 4 people could have even come close to handling with the success that he did, because without those 2 years that he was at Penn State, the Nittany Lions would be nowhere close to where they are right now as far as recovering from that. And it didn't hurt that after 2 or 3 years, the NCAA relaxed those penalties considerably. But I tell you what, if Bill O'Brien hadn't come in there and stopped the bleeding, they would be in real trouble. So I think this guy has shown that he can come in and fix difficult situations in a hurry. Of course, he's coached for Belichick, Saban, and he would be a solid place. I mean, a pick at a lot of places. I mean, Georgia Tech, he's a former assistant there. So this time around, I don't think it's possible for Nebraska to screw this one up, because there are so many tremendous coaches that it's not a secret that are interested in this job.
Exactly. And the one thing about O'Brien that I don't know, the little history there, they brought in Bill Callahan after he'd coached the Raiders in the in the Super Bowl. And he sort of flopped. I don't know what the deal was. He's been a line coach in the NFL again for the last 20 years after all that experiment. And our old friend Mike Riley from Alabama, I never did figure out what, they gave him all the gave him all the important stuff, plenty of recruiting money or whatever. And it's just, I don't know. Rob hit it on the head too. After Tom Osborne left, things just sort of unraveled.
Well, I thought Frank Solich was solid.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't winning 12 or 13 games a year and playing for the national championship, but they were really solid. As a matter of fact, in '99, they were 1 yard away from probably winning the national championship, because they fumbled at Texas in the regular season. That was their only loss. And in the BCS days, that was a killer. They played Texas in the rematch in the Big 12 championship game and just slaughtered them, and did the same thing to Tennessee in their bowl game. And then the next 2 or 3 years, they weren't as good. And then they made an ill-fated administrative decision, bringing in Steve Peterson to be the new AD. And he immediately fired Solich, and, Callahan came in. But I will say one thing, there are very few people in the sport of football that are better offensive line coaches than Bill O'Brien. Than Bill Callahan.
He really is. He really is. He's remember our friend Kim Helton, who's two sons, Clay and the other son are Western Kentucky, one of the best line coaches, defensive line or offensive line. Played at Florida with Bill Carr, the great team. Yeah. And he just couldn't quite make it. He was in Houston and just sort of bombed out. I think, some people are made to be all-time assistant coaches, I guess.
Well, Kim Helton.
I dealt with Coach Helton when I was at Adidas. I landed that deal with Houston, and we had them for the better part of a decade. And he was a funny guy, and had great experience. Coached for Spurrier at Florida, also. And of course, a lot of people don't realize that Clay Helton is his son. And man, I tell you what, whoever would have thought that Georgia Southern, less than a year after Clay got there, would be going to Lincoln and ending Scott Frost's career.
He can coach.
Yeah, let me say this too. I think when Kim Helton got to Houston, remember what he did? He had a radio show like love and marriage advice or something. I think he got distracted from being a coach. But he was one of the funniest people. I think he's from Pensacola over in Escambia County. But he was funny. Just like, we all remember Max Howell. I'd love to find Max Howell and get him on this show.
Who is he?
God, that guy. He knows football, and he's just one of those guys that gets you excited. Everything he talks about, he just makes it interesting. But let's look back now. Y'all are throwing a lot of names out there for that Nebraska job in the Big 12. And then you got Iowa State, Matt Campbell. I think Lance Leopold, if Kansas can keep him, Kansas, again, they have a lot of money. Again, they've got a multi-billion-dollar endowment. That means they've got boosters that are willing to pay up. Now, they do it for basketball. Will they do it for football? We're going to see about that. But here's what's crazy. Last weekend, Oklahoma and Nebraska played, and it was a non-event. That is a crime. That's a football crime. Okay? Who can tell you much about that game? And we can. Jimmy can. But come on. We got to get that. That game needs to be – Oklahoma's coming into the SEC, and they're not going to play Oklahoma State now. Bedlam's over.
Really
you see people, Bo, out on social media saying, who cares? And I'm not saying these guys are bad for saying that. Younger people will say that, but in the last 30 years, Oklahoma State's had some success. We're going to talk about that more, though. The stopwatch was just put in front of me by my wife and producer, Audrey. So we got to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with more talking about Bedlam being gone and what's next after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Browne back with Jimmy Hodge, Bo Carter out in Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington. Where Big 12 office is actually in Arlington. And I mean, I've been out to Dallas a lot. Jimmy's been out there a lot. You live there, but it's actually in Arlington, correct?
Well, no, it's actually in Irving, but it's right. It's funny.
Irving.
They've got Conference USA, the American Athletic, the college football playoff, and the Big 12 are all within like a mile of each other, sort of right close to the airports. They can jump on a plane, I guess.
Bill Hancock is out there. This is cool. All right, let's talk about it. Bedlam, I hate to see in-state rivalries taken away. And that one it's big. It's big in the state of Oklahoma, and all college football has to start locally. That's my take on it. Is that yours?
Yeah. And one of the toughest ones been the A&M Texas, from A&M going to the SEC and not playing that. Hopefully that's going to come back in 25 or 2025 or earlier. But no, at one time, Jimmy and Rob, they had a State Farm or one of the insurance or a big major corporate sponsor kept tally of all the Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State events in every sport. And then I think dollars to the school that had the most wins in the Bedlam. It goes all the way from women's volleyball to equestrian, as crazy as that is.
Well, and I think about it, college football in the middle of the country, West Coast, East Coast, we've just got to do everything we can to make it big. Again, we talked about it before the break. Oklahoma, Nebraska not playing. That's just not a good thing. All right, Jimmy, jump in here. I know you've got more questions with Bo Carter. Bo, you're out there in Big 12 country, but I'm just wondering, when Arizona State and Arizona, Herm Edwards got end zoned at the end of the game the other night. So they got to get him a coach before they can come to the Big 12. But that's a place where you can win. Frank Cush and a lot of other people have had success there, but it's been a while. As they say in the country, it's been a minute.
Yeah, you're right. And the rumors are still flying. The Pac-12 is kind of in limbo right now in the middle of their television negotiations. The Big 12 and the Pac-12's contracts both run out next year. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. There even been talks of mergers. Jimmy, you probably heard this, and maybe even the worst case scenario, the Mountain West and the Pac-12 remaining teams merging, which would give about a 20 or 22 team conference. So it's all about television, as you guys know.
Yeah, it is.
It is. And what we've heard also is that for now, the Big 12 expansion has been set, at least for the near future, with the additions of UCF, Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston. And is there any update on possibly allowing Texas and Oklahoma to leave early, since it appears the Big 12 is going to be set as far as their added membership goes, and that what we've heard is that since ESPN dropped out of the Big 12 TV negotiations, that they could possibly be working out a deal with the Big 12 to really sweeten a deal with a new contract, as you mentioned, runs out next year, where ESPN would really throw a lot more money into that, which would offset, let's say, the exit fee cost of $80 million for both Texas and Oklahoma to leave early. Just from a gut feeling, do you think that is a possibility, or will Texas and Oklahoma just finish out their contract obligations in the Big 12? Because it appears that we're getting to a point, I don't think they're going to be overly welcome these last couple of years in the Big 12, and it might be better for everybody to try to get this just cut and dried and let those two schools move on.
That's a great question, Jimmy. The SEC did release its schedule yesterday, and they've got Texas and Alabama are going to play their rematch. No mention of Texas and Oklahoma in the 3 schedule, so we know the Big 12 will play with 14 teams next year. The 4 schools have said they're going to leave their BYU's an independent in football, so they don't have any problem. But the other 3 are going to leave the American jump in. The Americans already got 6 Conference USA schools lined up. So the 2024 season is the big if right now. And plus, the Big 12's got to decide how they're going to configure a 14-team schedule next year.
Yeah, that is going to be 24-25 is going to be a big shift. In Houston, that market, that's a top 5 or 6 TV market in the country. Houston doesn't draw that well, Bo. Memphis had 35,000 at the Arkansas State game at the Liberty Bowl, at the Simmons First Bank Liberty Bowl. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting confused here. It's like, but they're supposed to be investing $150 to $200 million into that stadium. It's unbelievable, and that's a lot of money. I mean, Protective Life was built, that stadium in Birmingham, for about $175 million, 45,000 seat stadium. But Bo, big picture now for college football, going to that 12-team playoff. I love it. Jimmy likes it. It's going to create more interest. In November, everybody in the top 25 can theoretically say, hey, man, we're in the running for the playoffs. And I don't think it's going to make every game not – what makes college football so much fun and so special is that every game is big. And it's like when you're a college football fan and your team loses, you feel like your clothes just fell off and you're naked and everybody's looking at you. I mean, I felt like everybody was making fun of me. You know, that's how you feel when you live. That's why this stuff is so good. And as Buddy Martin, GatorbaitMedia.com, we love Buddy, as he says every time he's on here, every day. Who owns college football? I can't hear you. It's the fans. It is the fans, and it always will be the fans. It's not 18-year-old kids doing NIL deals. And I think NIL, you're already starting to see it happen. We're paying for this guy. He's not very good. It's no different than in the job market. You know, you get a job and you're in sales and you're not selling anything. You're just sharing a seat with your rear end. You know what I'm talking about, Bo and Jimmy.
Exactly. You know, the whole thing, it is about the fans. And I don't think the 12-team playoff is going to diminish the regular. You know, they talked about the pros. Everything's geared toward the postseason there. But in college, you hit all those good points, right, Rob? There, plus the championship games are going to take on a better thing. I don't know. They're still trying to figure out. I think Greg Sankey would like to get 6 SEC teams in every year for the vested interest. But one thing calls for the 10 FBS conference champions to be in there, and then 2 at large. I don't know whether that's going to fly or not, because the group of 5 versus the power of 5 battle all the time. But anyway, these conference championship games are going to really take on major importance now.
Yeah, I will say this. As Auburn basketball under Bruce Pearl has gotten to be really, really good. And I've always been one of these people, but people say, well, the regular season doesn't matter. Man, and my 94-year-old dad, the same way. I don't miss an Auburn game, basketball. I don't care how many they play. And then when they get to the SEC tournament and March Madness, I'm even more interested, but I watch every regular season game. I mean, there's only so many of them. And it's not going to diminish what we're seeing with the college football playoff is everybody wants to say they've made it at least once. And so far, James Madison moved up this year. Jimmy's a big James Madison fan. They moved up this year. They're now 131 Division I. And by the way, who is the clown that came up with FBF, FCS, and all that? Look, there's D1, there's D2, and there's D3. There's men and there's women. That's just it's that simple, you know. Come on, man. Oh gosh, I really sound dumb by saying that, but I digress. I think the interest is there, and I think it's getting stronger, Bo and Jimmy, and that's a great thing. 12 teams. Now you got people. Look, you don't want people in other parts of the country outside the South to not care about college football. We got to keep feeding this big TV machine, don't we?
Exactly. And, the Pac-12, we talked about this earlier, has had really diminishing attendance for like the last 15, 20 years. And, but the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC's really, it's, it's like the Mark Stoops versus Calipari thing. The ACC is a football conference. They've had Florida State and Clemson in there and Virginia Tech playing for national championships for the last 25, 30 years. So it's,
Well, Bo, after that loss to St. Peter's in the NCAA tournament, if I was John Calipari, I would have just let that one go, and just acknowledge the fact that, Kentucky's had 2 10-win seasons in football in the last 4 years, and now they've beaten Florida 3 times in the last 5 seasons.
Yeah. Hey.
So I think that the AD, Mitch Barnhart, might need to, and I'm sure he's probably had a little meeting with those 2 gentlemen and just say, hey, we're rowing in the same boat here. Let's just put an end to that type of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, Ken Capps is on with us right now, Bo Carter. I think he knows you. You know him. It's kind of like being on Austin City Limits or something like that, or sitting on the front porch at the general store, picking in and grinning and playing out there. We got Jimmy Hodge, Bo Carter. Let's bring in Ken Capps, knows a thing or two about college football. But what we're doing is we are celebrating the greatest game, college football history, traditions, and heroes. Ken Capps, man, it is fun having you on here with Bo Carter. I'm ready to hear it. Let's go. We got Zeppelin. We've got the band back together. It took less than $800 million, and we're doing it.
Well, gosh, if I'd have known you were having a Bo on this morning, he and I could have gotten together at this Starbucks not far from our house, and we could have just, been on together.
Yeah. That's right. Hey, man, Jimmy and I have just agreed, if we twist y'all's arm and we all talk some college football, let's get rolling. I love this stuff.
Well, I was really thinking about this morning. The Football Writers Association of America comes up every week with we have a sponsor, the Cheez-It Bowl, so it's called the Cheez-It Bowl National Team of the Week. And we vote on, which team is deserving to be, the number 1 team of the week. So as you can imagine, 2 weeks ago, it was App State over A&M. And so then we come to this past Saturday, and of course, App State wins again on this last play Hail Mary. And so we're thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to, vote those guys 2 weeks in a row? But then the name that nobody saw, Eastern Michigan beats Arizona State in Tempe, in the middle of the night for most of us, cost Herm Edwards his job. And so Eastern Michigan is the team of the week. So one of the things that's really struck me, and just this is only week 4, is just how much drama there's been off the field. All of these coaches, getting fired already. And I think truly who's on the hot seat this week is Harsin down in Auburn, don't you?
I was there at the scene of the crime last Saturday. Man, I mean, in the fourth quarter, you could sit anywhere you want, scholarship section anywhere at Jordan-Hare. Somebody yelled fire in a crowded theater, Ken Capps. And it was ugly. I mean, and I'll tell you one thing, the fat lady sang early. I mean, it was not a pretty situation. But Ken, I want to ask you this before we get back, throw it around here with Jimmy and Bo. Now with the early signing period in December, you cannot afford to wait until the end of the season, because Auburn did that the year of the virus. They didn't fire Gus Malzahn, Mr. Rogers, until December 13th. And when Browne Harsin was introduced Christmas Eve as the new Auburn coach, he'd missed the December signing period. To borrow the line from the movie Braveheart, when William Wallace went there and tried to get all the nobles to come fight, he said, instead of coming to fight for the people of Scotland, you're all going to sit around and wait for scraps to fall from Longshank's table. You can't do that in recruiting, can you? Because Longshanks doesn't spell anything.
No, absolutely not. And Mac Browne is famous from the University of Texas for starting that December recruiting area way back in the day.
Yeah.
And really put the pressure on all the other schools to start doing that December signing day. And you're absolutely right. You've got to just be. I mean, basically, recruiting is now a 365. Every day of the year you're recruiting now. I just saw coaches go on Thursday nights to recruits football games, to go watch them play in high school. They're recruiting them all year long. I mean, you would think they would, they bring them into on campus during the summer, but they're still bringing them every weekend on campus to see the game, to give them VIP tours, to let them talk to the other players. So yeah, you're absolutely right. If you're not done with most of your recruiting by Christmas, you're pretty much done.
Yeah, and they're all texting. I mean, I heard about a top wide receiver prospect. He's out for 4 to 6 weeks with sore thumbs and fingers from so much texting. It's just I mean, Jimmy, didn't you heard that, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean,
you got young kids. I do too. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just kind of the way of the world now.
Well, who's your best recruits? Who's your best recruiters? Your own players and your own recruits who are recruiting the other recruits. So if you can get that much enthusiasm and that much salesmanship going on your program, I mean, word of mouth is the strongest advertising. It just keeps happening over and over and over. I just saw yesterday, Jordan Hale, the big wide receiver from here in Texas. It was between Texas and Alabama. He's going. Well, the story was he's already texting all of his friends saying, "Come with me to Alabama."
Yeah, and it's amazing that his coach at Longview is Haynes King's dad, John King.
Yeah, hey,
there you go.
Jimmy, hold these thoughts because I want to get into this because you brought up. Or I've heard something about Haynes King's dad is strategically positioned in high school football in the state of Texas, and we want to talk about that. But we got to take a quick break. Want to thank everybody listening over in Atlanta on 680, Kicks 96.3, Central Alabama, Lake Martin, and all over on Sidelines.live and all over StreamYard, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
I'm back here with you. Final segment here on Sidelines this Thursday. My wife, Audrey, made a comment during the break. There's no texting etiquette. And I said, you know what? I remember when I was in the Boy Scouts studying for communications merit badge, it said, let the phone ring 11 times when you call someone. Good God, help us. I mean, but you think about it. You're a coach out at dinner with your family and 4 or 5 kids, whatever, or you get a text from a kid that says, hey, man, this school's offering me an extra $50,000 in NIL. What are you going to do? I mean, how are you going to eat your food without getting indigestion and heartburn? I mean, it is crazy, but I digress. And let's go back to Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago. But Lake Zurich, Illinois cools me off when I think about Zurich, Switzerland.
Well, again, this trend of recruits texting with others. It's just the way things are nowadays. And I mean, you see it, and the reason I know, I used to know Don Hasselbeck pretty well, and a couple of his sons were NFL quarterbacks, and one, of course, played in the Super Bowl with the Seattle. And he said it was just normal for NFL starting quarterbacks around the league to text each other, on a regular basis, just on any kind of new trends going on and so forth. And in this day and age, I mean, you have kids that are 10 and 12 years old that are just, they're fluent in in this new technology, and they make us look like idiots. I mean, we have to learn from them, on a lot of the new techniques that are used. But again, in recruiting, though, guys, with NIL and now the transfer portal, I mean, there are no limits on anything. You can pretty much do whatever you want to until the powers that be finally come up with some guidelines and at least some semblance of restrictions on how this is going to be controlled, if it can be.
If that is possible. Bo, looking when you were in the Big 12 office, I'm going to throw this to you and then to Ken. Do they have social media directors in there? I've hired one for the show. It's just, it's more than one man can bear. I got to have help. And I've got my kids on the payroll too.
I think they have two plus an intern assigned to that. And Jimmy and Rob and Ken seen this story. I just read earlier this week that Texas spent $280,000 recruiting Arch Manning. So besides the texting, and I think they had a wine and cheese dinner and filet mignon the whole visit for every meal. So.
Well, as Archie Bunker called it, fillet mignon. But anyway.
Well, and you know what? $280,000. That's chump change for Texas. People are going, so what? It's only $280,000. That's no big deal.
They got a bargain.
That's true.
Ken, I mean, what's going on out there now in the state of Texas? What are you hearing out of the A&M people? I mean, Jimbo Fisher's got an unbelievable deal. Nobody in the regular business world, I think, can get a 10-year, $75 million guarantee. And then it was bumped up last year, beginning of the season, to over $90 million. That he's protected. What does Jimbo? He worries. He will never worry again the rest of his life, nor will his children and grandchildren, if they do the proper estate planning, about money again. What motivates him, and why here in year 5 is A&M looking like, and everybody watching A&M is waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Well, I tell you, that was one of the things that I was going to talk to you guys about, because in the games that I'll be watching big time this weekend is A&M versus Arkansas right here in Arlington, Texas at Jerry World. And I mean, this is almost a must-win game for A&M. I mean, they are still licking their wounds from App State, but a good solid win over Arkansas would wipe that nasty taste out of their mouth. But if they lose to Arkansas, and that's definitely a possibility, I mean, there are a lot of people that are going to question Jimbo even more. And, in the week since that big loss, Jimbo says he's willing to change everything. And he even said he might give up calling plays, that he might hire an offensive coordinator. Now, I don't see that happening. I really don't, unless the pressure gets so high that, that's always the first thing, as a head coach does, is he doesn't fire himself. He hires another coach.
Yes.
And I can't see that happening until after, next season maybe. But I'm not sure what's going on with A&M, because, he was supposed to be the savior over there. And, he had the number one recruiting class. Haynes King, dad may be a big shot, but the son is going to ride the bench this week, and Max Johnson is going to be the quarterback. And, Arkansas right now is the leader in sacks. They've got the guy, they've got the I forget what the guy's name is. Well, Drew Sanders leads college football with 5.5 sacks, and Arkansas is ranked first nationally with 5.7 sacks per game. So that's what Max or Haynes or anybody else that's going to play quarterback at A&M is going to be looking at this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it, that Arkansas, this is such a big game for them because they recruit Texas hard. It's their biggest alumni base outside the state of Arkansas. So, yeah, it is a huge game, and you'll have a big crowd there. What motivates and what is it that gets Texas A&M fans? I know they love their school. They're loyal. We have Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com on with us a lot. Love him. I'm just saying preseason, I didn't buy the after Alabama, it's A&M. I've always been in Arkansas's corner. Now I'm going to be proven right or wrong temporarily by whatever happens Saturday. But from the Aggie perspective, they've got a lot of money that they've put up. And I know they got a lot of it. Okay. They've got a lot of money, but that's real money and someone's going to have to pay for it. But if A&M goes 7-5 or 8-4 this year, and coming into this season, 34-14, that was the record of Kevin Sumlin after 4 years and the record of Jimbo. But Kevin Sumlin had beaten top 5 and top 10 teams at home and on the road. Jimbo hasn't done that on the road like Kevin Sumlin did. So what might trigger some reaction from the Aggie fan base and the power brokers?
Well, Kevin Sumlin wasn't getting paid $75 million either.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree.
But he did have Johnny Football for 2 seasons.
That's right.
Yep. Right. I really think that if A&M, if they lose to Arkansas, and then look, they have Murderers Row over there in the SEC West, and they're not going to get past Alabama. I just don't see it at all. And you're exactly right. If they go 8-4, that is a disaster for A&M. Okay, if they go 7-5, Kyle Field will, implode. But again, I talked about this before after the App State game. There is no way you can fire Jimbo Fisher with that kind of guaranteed money. If it was $30 million, isn't it amazing how we talk about money like it's no big deal?
Yeah.
But $30 million maybe, okay, walk away. But when you're making $90 million, you just can't send the guy out the door. And then the other question is, who do you get?
Yeah, that's the question. And that's why I'm so opposed. Some athletic director out there, Bo, has got to call the bluff on these agents that do this stuff. It's really malpractice to allow the contract to be written.
It really is. These guys are, getting the 10 or 15%, as Ken and Jimmy know too. So it's in their self-interest to sign these long-term contracts, et cetera. And interesting deal too. I think you guys probably saw this. If Nebraska had waited until October 1st, the payout for Scott Frost would have been $8 million. As it was, they ended up having to pay him $16 million because I guess Trev Alberts thought that things had deteriorated so much after the Georgia Southern loss that they need to do something to try to boost the team morale or whatever. But they just they more or less kicked away $8 million. It's like you're saying, it's nothing in the context of athletics.
Yeah,
Bo, I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, can't you wait a couple more weeks and save $8 million?
That's right.
Yeah, and you could have paid the assistant coaching staff for the next coach for probably 3 years instead of giving Frost another $7.5 million. It made no sense whatsoever because you weren't fixing this in a span of 15 days or whatever it was, 18 days. Of course, October 1st fell on a Saturday, a game day, so you wouldn't be able to do anything. Well, I guess you could after the game, like they did to Bielema and
Herm Edwards.
So again, though, it's a wacky world, but man, you could get Lance Leopold for a third of that, or he wouldn't mind, but I guess his agent would. So you could get him for half of that for sure, and you'd have a great coach for, at least 10, 12 years.
Oh yeah. Hey, did you ever think that there would on the prime coaching list to take the next best job, it would be the head coach of a Kansas team?
No doubt about it. And I mean, this was a Kansas team that, 2 years ago, being in the Big 12, of course, they couldn't drop football, but I can guarantee you a lot of the big financial heavy hitters would have been fine with it. But it just shows you how much getting the right coach can change your fortunes in a hurry.
Oh,
yep.
No doubt. And so we talked about that. And then you look around, if Auburn were to pull the trigger and get rid of Bryan Harsin, they owe him $15 million in his buyout. And Auburn and Nebraska are already, I think, are tied at number one in paying people to not coach, go into the witness protection program. It is so, it's crazy. I just don't think you should give. Charlie Weiss started this stuff at Notre Dame. Remember, they gave him that 10-year deal, and he was gone. I remember he was on the sidelines coaching at Florida, offensive coordinator, and I remember on a show I heard, I think it was Coach Dye said he's gotten so fat he has to sit on a water cooler over on the side. He couldn't even stand. You're not getting your money's worth there. I just looking around at the college football landscape, fans, you look at the SEC and what's going on out there at A&M, but I think that A&M Arkansas game for A&M, that's a must win, and I think they're in a desperate situation. Arkansas secondary is not great, but they lead the nation in sacks, so you can make a pedestrian secondary look a lot better, Ken, by playing that way. So what's your pick on a score, Arkansas and A&M?
Golly, I honestly think that Arkansas is going to win, and I think it's going to be something around like 35-28, 35-32.
Wow, that will be that'll be a shootout. Last year was what, 24-17, and they broke that 9-game streak. So that was huge. Bottom line is the SEC it's just, you can't have. And I had a texter yesterday, Hiram Williams from Geneva, Alabama. I remember the name well. I think that was Hank Williams' real name, by the way, but whoever that is. And Hiram Hank Williams. But I think about this, and that is, he said, Dabo and Clemson are trending the other way. You can say whatever you want, but he thinks they would be fourth in the SEC West this year. But the SEC East, Ken and Jimmy and Bo, looks like they're getting better. Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, and Georgia. But Georgia is so much better than everybody else. But, hey, Mark Ham thinks Tennessee is going to go down there between the hedges and come away with the win there. But, Ken, that SEC East, West, it's unlike any other conference in America.
Well, you're right. And, I just keep thinking about, Texas and Oklahoma going over there and how that's going to shake things up. And, somebody was asking Sankey again about, when are Texas and Oklahoma coming? And, he's sticking by his guns and saying it's going to be, no earlier than 2024. So, the Sooners and the Horns still have at least another year over here. And I got to tell you one quick story, though. This was funny at Sarkisian's press conference this week. Texas plays Texas Tech up in Lubbock this week, and one of the reporters asked him, I have to laugh, Bo, you're going to love this. Somebody asked Sark if he had ever been to Lubbock. And he said, no, I've never been to Lubbock. And the first thing I thought of was, well, this may be Steve Sarkisian's first and last trip to Lubbock, Texas, USA.
Yeah. It's a lovely place, though. It's I think from.
Well, Rob, see, you like things like this.
Yeah.
Lubbock's not much to look at, but it is the birthplace of Buddy Holly.
Absolutely. And from Altus, Oklahoma to Lubbock, Texas, they grow more cotton than any other region in the world. short of as a buddy of mine, a guy that was in my Alabama world history class at Auburn one time said, the Yang to Z River Valley. Hey, look, man, Jimmy, we run out of time. We've got about a minute to go. Be quick.
Yeah. I've never known anybody that went to Texas Tech that didn't love going to school there. And they got a really nice setup there. It's a good place to coach.
It is. Look, I mean, Jimmy, no, listen, I'm with you. Anywhere they're playing college football, and we're going to talk about it again tomorrow, is a great place. But Ken and Bo and Jimmy, to all of our guests, Gary Harris, Otis Kirk there in the first hour, hogville.net. It's what we love, is getting everybody together. Ken, and we got to say this, Bo, tell people, bottom line is, you and Ken together, this is a lot of fun. We're developing more and more relationships out in the state of Texas. But, man, this is going to be so much fun when Oklahoma and Texas get into this league. I just think for people, back east, just get ready, because think about how much fun they had all those years, Southwest Conference and the Big 12. It's coming our way. But look, folks, we run out of time, and just say this: go out and give with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And we live in the greatest country in the history of the world, folks. If you have any doubt, go hug a veteran, shake their hand, and buy them around. We'll see you tomorrow. We're out of here.